Hello everyone and welcome to my channel. My name is Crown and today we are going to have some more stories that I hope that you will enjoy. But before we start, it will be so much appreciated if you would subscribe to the channel, like the video if you enjoyed it, and maybe leave a comment down below. These simple clicks would mean a lot to the future of this channel and really reward the effort that I put in every day. And now, without further ado, let's go! First story. Jerk driver ends up paying for a lot more than a new car. First, a little backstory. I'm a college student and cycle to campus every day. It is not a long ride at all, but I have to go through a zone where it's illegal to ride a bicycle on the sidewalk, so I'm forced to ride on the road. Most drivers do not care and just go around me since I stay on the edge and do not make myself a nuisance. Also, I have a bad e-bike that I commute on. This will be important later. A few weeks ago, a guy in a Ford SUV, I don't know exactly which kind, started yelling at me as he drove by while I was in a road-only zone. All the usual get off the road, roads are for cars, you're too slow kinda stuff. I get that from drivers on a weekly basis. I just ignore him and keep going. This man was special though, since he cut right in front of me and slammed on his brakes after yelling. I was able to stop before I hit him, and he floored it out of there yelling, "Better be careful next time, bike." I was pretty mad, but I hadn't got his license plate or anything, and I doubt anything could be done about it anyway. There was no real proof. Over lunch, I told one of my friends who works as an EMT the story, and he got seriously mad. Apparently, he has seen the results of a car successfully brake checking on a cyclist, and they are not pretty. 2 days later, the same Ford SUV jerk tried to brake check me again. I was expecting it as soon as I heard him yelling, "Get on the sidewalk, bike," from behind. So I avoided a crash again. I told my EMT friend over lunch again, and he was even madder than before. I wanted to let it go since I can't really do anything about him, and my bicycle isn't going to win in a crash. And this guy keeps trying to brake check me every few days during my morning commute whenever we're on the same patch of road at the same time. About a week ago, my EMT friend told me that he told my story to one of his friends in the campus police, who was equally pissed off, and the two of them wanted to catch this jerk driver. The plan was to have the policeman parked on the side of the road in hopes of catching and pulling over that jerk. I heartily agreed, and the officer pulled some strings and had himself posted on speeder catching duty for that stretch of road. A few days passed uneventfully, with no sign of the road rager. I saw the cop parked in the same spot on the side of the road every day, a spot where the road has a left turn lane and a straight lane. Finally, I'm pedaling along and I hear the familiar voice scream, "Get the heck off the road, jerk!" I yelled back, "Catch me then," and I took off. I was spinning my scrawny little chicken legs as hard as they would go, and begged the throttle. I guess this made the driver even madder, because I heard his engine roar as he pursued me. He shifted into the left lane as I stayed in the right. I looked to the side and saw a nasty old man in the driver's seat, with the passenger window open. His mouth was going like he was yelling, but I couldn't hear him over the wind noise. I saw the police car spot approaching and started to slow down. Taking the opportunity, the driver swung right in front of me. I don't know if it was the speed or his anger that made him swing wide, but he cut across my lane and crashed straight into the back of the police car. I barely applied my brakes, slowed down to about 50 miles per hour, and crashed into the side of his car. The officer got out, spitting mad would be an understatement, and called an ambulance and another police car. Everyone was unhurt, since the jerk was going only like 25 miles per hour. But there was enough of an impact to trigger the SUV's airbags. The jerk ended up getting arrested for driving drunk. Seriously, who drinks before 9 AM? For an illegal lane change and probably other stuff too. I don't know all the details. I imagine that causing a crash like that would entail some additional charges. The guy ended up having to pay for extensive repairs on the police cruiser and for a new e-bike to replace the one he destroyed by cutting in front of me. The frame snapped. On top of that, I hear that his car was defined as totaled by his insurance company, since the airbags went off and all that. So he also has to pay for a new car. With any luck, he will lose his license from the drunk driving charges. He won't be able to menace cyclists again. Next story. Yell at us for parking in a reserved space, get arrested and evicted. Disclaimer: Unit 8 was rented by Rick and Tara, not owned. Last winter around January, me, my family and close friends were staying at our condo in Vermont for New Year's to celebrate, ski and so on. My dad owns the 8-unit complex our condo is in, and all but one had people up for the holidays. There is a decent amount of area for parking, but when there is a lot of people all there at once, it can get tight. So one night after returning from the mountain, we parked in a spot closest to the stairs to unload everything easier. Our parking lot isn't one with actual spots or anything like that because it's just gravel and dirt. So it's really just eyed out and first come first serve. A few hours later, my brother went to the car to get something from the car where there was a cardboard sign left on the car. The sign read reserved parking for Unit 8. Handicapped on both sides. And yes, they forgot the N in handicapped on both sides as well. Like I said, there is no specific spots for anyone. Unit 8 was one of the smaller units on the ground level, about half the size of the rest. The couple that rented there was sketchy to say the least. They had to be in their mid-20s, but we never saw them much, and we did not know too much about them. Let's just call them Rick and Tara. Another 20 minutes later and I go down to the car to get some forgotten gloves. As I unlock the car, the lights alert him someone is at the car. And through the window, Rick starts yelling at me, telling me I have to move the car by the morning or they would have it towed. At this point I can also realize that Rick is off of something. So I subsequently ignore him, grab my things and head back up. I get into the condo and explain to my dad the experience I just had with Rick. At this point he'd had enough and decided he was going to go down there himself to handle things. So he goes down there to talk to him. My dad was really the only person that had met them before, but it was briefly during the leasing of their unit. He knocks on the door and it's about 30 seconds until Rick angrily answers the door. He crankly asks, "What do you want?" And my dad politely explains that no spots are reserved and that it's first come first serve. Rick instantly starts freaking out, saying that it's a handicapped spot and that they are going to call the landlord. They had little experience with my dad when they leased a place about a year ago, and in that time, he was diagnosed with cancer and lost a lot of weight. With that, his appearance changed drastically. Rick did not realize he was speaking to the landlord and kept his rant going. As my dad was going to lay it out for him, he noticed on a table in the living area that there was a pipe of sorts. Paired with the behavior and appearance of Rick at the time, my dad concluded it was a pipe of sorts for drugs. He backpedaled out of the conversation and returned back up to our condo. When he got back in, he called the cops explaining the situation and what he saw. 30 minutes later, cops pull up and start talking to Rick, going off what my dad told him about the pipe. One of the cops noticed it, but this time out in the open with a bag next to it. At that point, it was revealed that they were smoking crack and they were both arrested. Along with that, my dad also evicted them from the property for violating terms, obviously. We ended up renovating the whole place afterwards because who knows how long they have been smoking that inside. The upside is that the cardboard sign still hangs in the living room and gives us a laugh each time we pass. I see a lot of fuss over the handicapped spot and let me confirm that neither Rick nor Tara had any disability or handicap. Also, throughout the story, I meant to be saying that they were renters, not buyers. Also, see a bunch of you quite mad about how we handle things. If you're a landlord and someone is smoking crack in the unit you're renting out to them, then most likely you're going to have them removed. Seriously, I feel for the addicts that have corrected themselves. And I truly hope the best for Rick and Tara. Next story. Sell beer to my kid, will ya? So we all know that sometimes revenge is a dish best served cold, and the story is an old family legend. My grandmother was a pro at the long game, and this one was one of her best acts. Back in the 70s, there was a little pizza shop around the corner from their house that she discovered was selling beer to my 15-year-old uncle. She marched right into the store during the busiest time on a Saturday night and yelled at the owner that nonsense needed to stop now. This idiot waved her off and said it was his business and he could do whatever he wanted. He practically shoved her out the front door and told her not to come back. My grandmother told him if he ever sold beer to my uncle again, it would be the end of his days in that neighborhood. Remember, this was the 70s. The police weren't really enforcing liquor laws as stringent as they are now, especially when it came to corner pizza shops and one woman's allegations that their 15-year-old son was getting beer illegally. Fast forward about 1 month, and what does my grandmother find under my uncle's bed? Beer. And she knows where he got it. She confronts him, and just like before, he says a pizza guy had been selling it to him and all the neighborhood kids. My grandmother asks some other mothers if they have found their kids with beer, and sure enough, yep, it is a thing. Now you might be thinking, so what? A couple of teenagers with beer. Big deal. We all did that. Except this guy was making a killing selling beer to the neighborhood kids. According to my uncle, he was selling to kids as young as 8. This he confirmed for me when he was an adult, and even sold it to them out the back door after hours, which is really illegal, since it breaks major liquor laws to do that. My grandfather then went to the cops, and they played the "we'll take a report and look into it" type of stance with him. Not to fear. My grandmother was going to make good on her threats. I should probably mention that this whole thing went down in August. My grandmother threatened my uncle with life imprisonment if he ever bought beer there again and to completely stay out of that job because bad things were going to happen. August comes and goes, and so does September, October, November, and the entire winter and spring. Like I said, my grandmother liked to play the long game. So July rolls around, and completely out of the blue, a municipal snowplow rolls down the street at midnight and right into the front of this guy's shop, backing up and smashing into it again, and once more for good measure. It then pulls back and rolls down the street like nothing happened, never to be seen again. The whole thing was witnessed by a couple of neighbors sitting on their front steps, trying to beat the heat that night. They called the cops and no one could believe what they were looking at, and that there was a snowplow out in July. Clearly someone was mistaken. The mothers of the neighborhood knew there was no mistake. They knew what went down, and it was a silent secret among them. No one spoke of it, no one acknowledged it, and no one cared. My family knew the real story. My grandmother knew someone who needed money, so she paid him to help. The guy had a buddy who had access to the snowplows for the county, and the rest was history. Even with all the money the pizza shop guy made selling beer to minors, and he did not have adequate business insurance to rebuild. Within days, he was closed for good. Next story. The customer is not always right in my field. So I'm an ASE certified mechanic. I've been wrenching for 22 years. And the story happened way back when I was still an oil change tech and learning my way. This customer comes in one day and wants us to look at his brakes and put some pads on the car that he brought. The shop manager had me bring the car in to look at. I pull the car in the shop and it's grinding real bad when I hit the brakes. I know it is more than a bad job. So the car goes up. The tires comes off and sure enough, he let his brakes go for so long there is no more brake surface on the rotors. He let his brakes go for so long there is no more brake surface on the rotors. He had worn them down to the cooling fins in the middle of the rotor. I of course tell my manager. Well, he told the customer, a crotchety old man, the situation and explained he needs new rotors. We even took him out and showed him there's really no rotor lift at all. Naturally, the guy gets super pissed. Says we are just trying to get more money out of him. We better just do what he wants or he's going somewhere else, blah blah blah. My manager takes it all in as cool as a cucumber. When the dude was finished, my manager did the neatest thing I had ever seen at the time. He very calmly explained that the vehicle needed to be repaired correctly, or he would red flag the car as it was unsafe to drive. An old boy looked like he was going to explode. Threatened to call the cops if we didn't return his vehicle. We were just crooks and the whole 9 yards. My boss said it's cool, I'll call them for you. He called in the state highway patrol and showed them the car in front of the customer. They looked at him and said this car is unsafe for the road. He either fixes it correctly or has to tow it out of our shop if he wants to go somewhere else cause they will not let it on the road. And the sad thing is the man ended up paying to have it towed out a few days later, which I'm sure cost more than $40 for new rotors. And I don't know if he got it fixed right or not. Most wrenchers out there just want your car to be safe. We run on the same roads. I did not know at the time, but I do now, that we do have authority to lock your car down. Well, if it's completely unsafe for the road, until it is fixed correctly or towed somewhere else to get fixed correctly. I love what I do because I make the road safer. I also work in a field where no, the customer is not always right. That old man learned the hard way, and a few others in my career have as well. And now we have reached the end of today's stories. Thank you for watching and see you next time.